Yeah, what's good, YouTube? We got Legend of Winning. Why the NBA should be afraid of Zion's return. Shout out to the big man. Go. Let's get it.
It feels like it was just yesterday when the New Orleans Pelicans won the NBA lottery and with the first overall pick decided to select 6'6" wrecking ball of a forward, Zion Williamson. A prospect that was so electrifying that many people not only assumed that he could alter a franchise, but also potentially be the face of the league. Now within his time in the NBA, Zion has given us glimpses of this, but unfortunately, they've only been glimpses. Because since Zion has been drafted up until today, he has only played 85 games and missed the entire season last year due to a foot injury, which is a shame because by his sophomore season, Zion was already playing at an all-NBA level. What made it even more impressive is that he was doing this on a roster that, quite frankly, was not set to maximize his offensive potential. However, since the last time we've seen him on the floor, a lot of things have changed. New Orleans has made a lot of adjustments to their roster, coaching staff, and added even more young prospects to their team to help complement Zion's game. Many of these alterations really panned out towards the tail end of the season when the Pelicans were able to bounce back from their bad start, make the playoffs, and even push the Phoenix Suns to 6 games. And be very mindful, when they did this, not only was Zion obviously not available, but even Ingram missed his fair share of games within the last few months of the regular season. And yet, somehow, the Pelicans were still one of the league's best teams post the trading deadline. A huge contributing factor to this outcome was acquiring CJ McCollum in the middle of the season. The savvy veteran guard provided instant offense to a Pelicans team that desperately needed it. But what I found really interesting about McCollum last year is how quickly he was able to adapt to the new roles that he adopted last season, with Dame in and out of the lineup dealing with injuries, and then him with a new team in New Orleans. The 30-year-old guard exceeded my expectations with more frequent reps of ball handling in both pick and roll and isolation sets, and what really blew me away was the glimpses of quality playmaking that we saw from him as well. CJ's assist numbers peaked at career highs, averaging nearly 6 a game when he transitioned to New Orleans, and while adopting these new responsibilities, his rate of efficiency stayed relatively the same, and the turnovers never became inflated. A huge reason why the learning curve wasn't that steep is because how nasty of a mid-range jumper CJ has on him. For the fourth straight season, CJ McCollum shot 47% or better in the mid-range area, and when you marry that accuracy with the level of volume he was also providing, McCollum has easily been one of the league's best mid-range scorers within his time frame. Now, with that being said, I don't want to make it seem as if like CJ will be this savant in pick and roll action, because of course he will not be. The lack of foot speed will clearly put a limitation on what he can do when the ball is in his hands. However, if he continues to leverage his skill set with his mid-range jumper and even his floater from time to time, CJ will be more than adequate, especially as a third option on this team, which is very important to highlight, because when you stop and think about it, there is a possibility that heading into this year, the Pelicans could have a top 5 third option in the entire association, making this offense even more impressive. However, the one thing that I really liked out of CJ last year was how much of a sharpshooter he was. Quiet as kept, the 6'3" guard was one of the league's best catch-and-shoot three-point shooters last season, as he converted on 43% of his catch-and-shoot three-pointers with an effective field goal percentage of 63.6, and when you compare those numbers to the rest of the league, he was easily one of the most lethal catch-and-shoot players in the NBA.
For new businesses, Fiverr freelancers is like a...
Oh, bro, you ever, bro. That's why I be hating YouTube sometimes with these ads, bro. This should be killing that energy, bro.
Alongside CJ McCollum was the 6'11" big body offensive leaning center, Jonas Valanciunas. The Pelicans acquired Valanciunas during the 2021 offseason in hopes to replace Steven Adams. And at first I was a bit skeptical because of the potential defensive drop-off. However, seeing how JV performed last year without Zion, quite frankly, I'm extremely optimistic of this pairing. Throughout his career, the 30-year-old big man has made a name for himself as one of the more active post players, and the results of that has been a mixed bag, largely because Jonas doesn't get to the free throw line as much as his peers, as well as him turning the ball over pretty frequently. However, I don't think any of those will be a problem this year. I believe this year Jonas is going to fall on the side of a more positive post scorer, because this is a team that has a lot of offensive firepower, as well as a league that is becoming smaller and more dependent on switches. But that's not why I brought him up. The reason why is because of two things. A, Jonas has a strap on him. The big fella actually added a 3-point shot to his arsenal, and he's always had a lot of potential as a mid-range jump shooter as well. The reason why this is important is not only so JV can stay relevant in an evolving league, but also so he can be a really good fit alongside Zion, who's probably going to be the most dominant paint presence in the league this year. And then
it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's not like super sweet, but it's like, it's more chewy though, I find. Yeah.
Second thing that really impresses me is Jonas's presence on the offensive glass. Last year, the Pelicans were the third best offensive rebounding team in the NBA with an offensive rebounding rate of 27%. Mind you, Zion did not play the entire season. Larry Nance only played 9 games. Brandon Ingram missed 20 plus games, and both Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who are solid offensive rebounding wings, received fewer minutes last year than they are projected to receive this upcoming season. And yet they still finished third, and a huge reason for this is because of Valanciunas. So with everyone healthy, coming back, playing more minutes, there is a huge possibility that the Pelicans are not only going to be the best offensive rebounding team in the league, but they may do it by a fairly wide margin. And all of this doesn't even touch on the potential improvements that we're going to see from some of the younger supporting cast members, in particular Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Last year, Herb Jones quickly became a fan favorite, and not because of any flashy offensive moves, but because of his effort and hustle on a defensive end. Standing at 6'8" with a reported 7-foot wingspan, Jones gave a lot of perimeter players the fits last season. He finished top 5 in total deflections, top 5 in total contested 3-pointers, and he did all of this as a rookie, which is probably the biggest reason why you're not too familiar with him. With him being selected in the second round, he was easily one of the biggest steals in last year's draft class, and moving forward, he makes sense for a team that may have some pretty significant problems with their perimeter defense, with both Devontae Graham and CJ McCollum being negatives in those aspects. However, there are some concerns offensively, especially in a team that features Zion, who seems to not have too much offensive range, with Herb Jones being a non-3-point shooting threat, as well as him not having any form of self-creation. There could be a pretty steep learning curve if he wants to share any minutes with Zion, but there is a possibility because of the amount of attention that Zion possesses from the opposing team, it may not be that big of a deal. However, if the Pelicans want a little bit more offense, then they can lean towards Trey Murphy, who last year was a rookie as well, which is why you're probably not too familiar with him either, but showed a lot of promise offensively, especially off ball and recognizing proper floor spacing. The numbers in which he was producing in terms of his level of efficiency and volume definitely isn't eye-grabby, and you can definitely have your reservations. However, personally watching him close out the season, his efficiency numbers looked much better, and also watching him in preseason, understanding off-ball movement, finding his spots, understanding proper floor spacing are all things that'll be very pivotal when he is on the floor, regardless of who's surrounding with him. And to top it all off, Murphy, similar to Herb Jones, has nice length and size on him as well. Standing at 6'9" with a reported 7-foot wingspan means that there could be some potential of being a positive defensive player as well. And with both of these young perimeter-oriented prospects with their length, size, and distinctive playing style, it actually complements Brandon Ingram's game very well. Now, from my experience, the response that Ingram gets in the NBA community is a bit mixed. Of course, due to the lack of explosiveness and size, I don't think that BI will ever reach the mark of being the next Kevin Durant, because he's just not that. And last year's inconsistencies are definitely raising some concerns that I'm all ears for. However, I think the dismissal of the 25-year-old forward is a bit too soon. In my opinion, the up and downs of Ingram last year was because he adopted a new playmaking role, which I don't believe will be too much of a problem this year, because I don't believe that responsibility will be as much as a burden on him in this upcoming season, with him playing alongside CJ and Zion. Furthermore, the struggles that we saw from Ingram last year, I just don't think will be consistent moving forward, because he'll be playing next to Zion. When you're on the floor with somebody who receives that level of defensive attention, it really does open up a lot for your game. And it showed in the 2020 and 2021 season when Ingram was sharing the floor with Zion. He easily had his best 2 years of his career, and I don't think that was coincidental. 24 points, 4 to 5 assists, 5 to 6 rebounds on a true shooting of roughly 58% is really good production from a second option. And I
want to know how to create awesome videos? Check out my
nigga Low is getting his bread today, bro. Fucking hell.
think once people accept that perspective, they can stop comparing him to the Kevin Durant's of the world or this unicorn scorer that he was expected to be entering the NBA, and instead accept him as the complementary volume scorer to a dominant figure. So instead of Kevin Durant, he's much more akin to Chris Middleton. Not saying that Zion is Giannis, but I think you understand the comparison. Zion dominates the paint, has his limitations when it comes to self-creation and floor spacing. Ingram complements that very well. And speaking of Zion, all of this works really well when he's brought back into the fold of this entire offense and this team, which I'm really excited for because I truly believe a lot of people may have forgotten how dominant of a force he was in his second year in the NBA. Just looking at it from a sheer volume standpoint, Zion averaged 27 points, 7 rebounds, nearly 4 assists, and he was converting his shots at 61% from the field and getting to the free throw line 9 times and converting those at roughly 70%. And for my stat nerds out there, those shooting splits converted to a true shooting percentage of roughly 65%. 65% on 27 points per game as a sophomore. For those who aren't comprehending what I'm saying right now, that volume with that efficiency is only seen from some of the greatest offensive players of all time in their peaks. And Zion was doing that in year 2 on a team that featured Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams. Let that sink in for a second, okay? Just really let that sink in. Now, the way that Zion was able to produce these numbers had a lot to do with his interior presence, in which I've been hinting about throughout the entire video. In 2021, Zion was the most prominent figure within 5 feet of the basket, and quite frankly, it really wasn't even close. He averaged 14 shot attempts within 5 feet, converting 65% of them, and the next player was obviously Giannis with 9.5. Having this type of offensive influence would do wonders for a team that struggled to be consistent when it came to finishing at the basket, ran at a fairly slow pace, and was pedestrian at best when it came to producing out of pick and roll sets. Factors that Zion should be able to immediately positively impact. And the biggest reason for this is just simply how much attention he possesses from the opposing team when the ball is in his hands or even when he's near the basket. Because of this level of defensive attention, when head coach Stan Van Gundy wanted to be a bit more experimental and let the offense run through Zion when he brought the ball up, the role of being a point forward and picking up playmaking responsibilities was such a seamless transition that it came across as a no-brainer and honestly should have been experimented sooner in the season. And mind you, all this was happening while Zion was on a team that was not set to maximize who he was as a player. Replacing non-floor spacers and negative offensive pieces in Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe and presenting better options to fit around Zion offensively really has me so optimistic about what this team can do on that side of the floor that I would easily project that New Orleans should be one of the league's best offensive units. Now, of course, everything isn't perfect. Defensively, I definitely have my concerns and reservations. Both CJ McCollum and Devontae Graham are too small of a backcourt to really defend anybody. Also, Valanciunas certainly isn't nimble, so there will definitely be teams that will pick at him in pick and roll sets. And even as high as I am on their offense, it does concern me that there's no one who's anywhere near close to being a traditional playmaker or a traditional point guard on this team. But my biggest concern outside of Zion's health is what he's going to produce defensively. His motor on that side of the floor certainly isn't anywhere near close to what it was coming out of college. And I hate to be a preseason prickler, but what I saw out of Zion with his transition defense, yeah, it was very disappointing. But even at my most pessimistic viewpoint with this team, I am very excited what New Orleans is bringing to the table this year. I expect this team to not only make the playoffs, but potentially have a higher seeding in the Western Conference than a lot of people are expecting. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. What do you think about Zion, B.I., CJ McCollum, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Western Conference? Let me know all about it. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell. And finally, make sure you check me out on my second channel. The NBA season is back at it, so I'm uploading much more frequently here and on my other channel. So make sure you go check it out. And until next time,
alright, bro. What I think about them? My hands is crazy right now. Hold on. What I think about Zion? Zion's a demon, bro. A healthy Zion is a demon not a lot of people can fuck with. Let's just keep it a band, bro. Zion is a bigger, stronger version of Ja Morant when it comes to dunking. You know what I'm saying? That shit's scary, bro. And the Pelicans, shoot, they ain't gonna win it, but glad to see that they're building up their team. They're building up a good roster.